Okay, let's get this one going too. Oh, I didn't do. I forget I don't have it always automated. Yeah. Jeannie dropped off. Gene. Okay. Come in here. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, so this yours? Oh, keep mine here. That's okay. So we have. Make sure I got this on silent here. I got on too many clothes. I'm gonna take off the sweater. Yeah, it's not really that cool out there. It kind of looks like it is. It's actually good working weather. Mhm. So we anyway, we're live, and just for anyone's information, one thing that I guess a little bit easier on the men's class, we can tape it, anybody can watch it. So yeah, I made that mention last night. So it's just if you're ever at home, need something, Gene? Oh, I bet he forgot his hearing device. But if you're ever home and not able to be here, it will be streamed on the uh, YouTube, the Heritage Edition YouTube page, and also the Facebook Heritage Edition Facebook page, which we also do Sunday mornings. Now, I utilize my personal Facebook page as well on Sundays, but I don't see a need for doing that here. The church's Facebook page is actually public, and also it allows don't quite got we don't have quite as good of a internet connection here, so it allows us to stream fairly decent without having to worry about uh, anyway having any issues. So hopefully everybody's doing okay. Gene, yeah. So we've ate what we want. You've got to eat the rest of those because Betty said she don't want. Just kidding. She got baggies. We're gonna take bags home.
Yeah, Betty said don't bring any of them home.
Yeah. So we're gonna we still last week we talked a lot about uh, Solomon. In fact, that David was basically, I guess, kind of the way that description would be his deathbed. But they roused him up just enough to they made sure that there we go. Uh, but they roused him up because uh, what was it? Adonijah had tried to usurp the throne. Basically, knowing David was not able to do much at that time, and uh, so he tried to assume the throne. And he had some people that went with him. He had the priest that went with him. One of the priests. There were apparently two that acted as high priest during that time. One was Zadok. Zadok stayed with I guess Solomon's side, but Abiathar went with uh, Adonijah, and so anyway, they tried to have a big to do about that Adonijah was king. Well, anyway, the people that's loyal to Solomon, such as Zadok, uh, Nathan, uh, they knew what was going on. They went to Bathsheba, went to David, and David had already decreed. In fact, it wasn't David that had just decreed. Um, it was the Lord that had decreed that Solomon would be the king. So anyway, so they did the same thing, except they did it in a little bit more public spot. And what was the big difference in Solomon's thing where they uh, initially told that he was the king?
he entered on the king's mule.
He was on the king's mule, so that knew he had the king's backing. And then they went back, and he actually sit on the king's throne, and all the servants of David and everything. So it was clear that David had authorized this. The people loved it, and needless to say, those that had went, they understood that there was no chance that Adonijah would be king. Now, we went through this, and there's something interesting that happens to Abiathar, and we'll get to that. However, we're going to kind of, I won't say backtrack, it's more sidetrack, because we don't know exactly when some of these things transpired. As we talked about last week, David was considered old, but he wasn't really old, by what some people would consider. But we all know people. You just mentioned your cousin, basically same age as you. Yeah. And hopefully you've got a long life still to go, but you just never know. And then some people, they get a certain age and they can't do much. And, they need someone to help them out, take care of them. Then other people, they seem to, well into even their 90s or so. It just is very different. We see this even in our soon-to-be former president, Biden, and then our newly elected president. Even though they're really not that much age difference, you can see a great difference in just the way they present themselves, the way they carry themselves. You see this with a lot of people. One person I've always thought, William Shatner. I don't know if you've ever seen him anything recently, but he doesn't carry himself and talk like someone that is as old as he is. He's in his 90s. He's like 92 years old. And it's just, you hear him talk, and he's very alert, and he acts like he did 20, 30 years ago as far as that goes. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. But David was old, and David looked old, acted old. He'd had a hard life. And as we said, about how old was he probably in the First Kings account? Probably 69-ish, something like that, because he died at 70. So he had lived he'd been king for about 40 years. And that took a toll on him, especially the things that happened in David's life. And all those things, by the way, the hardships and the difficult things, they were all brought on mainly by his actions. And so, sometimes, you see these people on TV today that they'll preach what's called a prosperity gospel. Have you ever seen that? Mm-hmm. I think one of the most famous ones is a guy named, even his name, Creflo Dollar.
I read somewhere one time where in the 1700s, 1800s mm-hmm. era, that men that reached the age of 40 to 50 years old was considered to be an old man.
Probably so.
And I reckon that to be this way, and that was the lifestyle that they had to lead, and how much hard work that they had to do on the farms and so on and so forth, that was all done by hand.
It was. And then you think about
the age,
yeah.
More.
And you think about today, well, one of the things today that is a big difference, and sadly we have a human experiment for that. I'm prone to being close to things that Korea. It's close to my heart, obviously, with some. But up until World War II, and actually a little bit later, because the Civil War didn't start till, as our part was called, the Korean War, but it was basically a Civil War in like 1951. And up until then, Korea was a one nation. The whole peninsula was Korean. They have a history that goes back, unique history, goes back well over 2,500 years. And they were exactly the same. They had the same economics, same, poor quality of life. And so you look at it, and roughly since the end of the Korean War, it's been completely separated. You don't pass from one end to the other. And so for what's that, from probably 54, so that'd be 70 years. So in 70 years. So, and I could be off an inch or two, but so since that time, and of course, North Korea started off slow. It had its own problems. It had its kind of own dictators and issues. And it probably wasn't until the 70s that South Korea started actually turning to capitalism and things like that. And really, so really since the 70s, the average North Korean, average North Korean male is 5'4" tall. The average female is 5'1". In North Korea, the average male, by the way, they're only an inch shorter than us now. The average male is 5'9", I think, right at it. And the average female is 5'4". So what's the difference? What was the difference? Well, it's nutrition. When you don't eat right, when you don't eat hardly anything, when you don't have good quality food, and even those of us that eat really bad, just about everything we eat now is fortified with vitamins and all this kind of things. And so it's not just your age, it's quality of life when you get a certain age now is better than it was, you know, say your grandparents, great grandparents' age. Also, how many of y'all take some type of medicine?
How many what?
How many of y'all take some type of medicine?
Take what?
Medicine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of it.
Kinds of medicine.
Yeah. How long you been taking that medicine or different medicines?
Let's say about 30 years.
30 years. So what do you think back in those days that you're talking about when people, they had the same issues that we have as well? What did they do when they got that age and they had developed, say, heart problems, blood pressure problems, diabetes and other things? What did they do back in that day?
They died.
They died. Yes, that's exactly right. So, there's a lot of reasons why the quality and, is that raining? Over there. It's raining there. Raining here. I don't know where y'all are. Okay. Well, let's get to, so we're going to do a sideways because during this time when David starts getting bad, this would have been, I guess, a little bit before, but not much. And in fact, Chronicles doesn't go into this account of Adonijah. And I always find that interesting how that you can see the totality in the same way in the gospel accounts sometimes, and some things will have some things that others don't. But Kings doesn't have any of this here that we're going to talk about today and possibly next week. And that is David's preparations for the temple. It just kind of loosely says it, whereas First Chronicles 22 through really almost the end of the book deals with the preparations. First Chronicles.
Oh,
Yeah. So deals with the preparations that
went right through Kings, I guess.
Well, we'll get back to Kings. They parallel, so you got to kind of do both of them. And this is where they do a little different, but it's during the same time frame. So we're going to look at First Chronicles 22.
3-2.
22. 2.
2.
Yeah. 2.
Battery charger went down on me last night.
Uh-oh.
I forgot to charge it up this morning, and now my hearing aids are about down. Okay, I'm there. 2 and 2.
Okay. I'm probably going to get some type of, I've got some stuff I can get that will help with that. And so, but anyway, I know we're First Chronicles 22. Well, look at there. You had it marked. Okay. That's good. So First Chronicles 22:1, and we'll just kind of read through this until I want to stop on a few things. But it says, Then David said, Here shall the house of the Lord God, and here the altar of burnt offering for Israel. Now, once again, so let's think back just a little bit. Where was the here? What had happened there? You could look back up to 21 and you'd see What happens?
Now you in First Chronicle?
22.
Huh?
22, not 2, but 22.
Oh. Pardon me.
It's okay. You had one of the twos. So
Well,
what
that
had
looked
happened?
right.
What had happened for David to say, "This is where the house of the Lord, and here the altar of burnt offering for Israel"? What had just took place in 21? You can look up and see if you want to, but we went over that probably a couple weeks ago. And where is the here? We talked about that too.
Threshing floor.
Threshing floor, Ornan, and now what else would this become? Future temple. What was it also known as? Mount Moriah. And when was it first introduced in Scripture?
Abraham was supposed to
Where he
sacrifice
was ready to offer up Isaac. And so he had taken the census, and then of course he chose the punishment of God would send a pestilence on him and the angel of the Lord. And anyway, so here's where David purchased the threshing floor, built an altar, and God relented from doing any more destruction. And this is where the temple would be built. Now, we don't know what kind of time frame goes between, verse 1 to verse 2. But verse 2 then says, David commanded to gather together resident aliens who were in the land of Israel, and he set stone cutters to prepare dressed stones for the building of the house, building the house of the Lord. We know what a resident alien is, don't we?
A what now?
A resident alien. We're not talking about someone from Mars, green man from Mars.
I said they're illegal here.
Well, okay. Now, see, this would not be an illegal. Yeah. Okay. Now, for example, Sung Min, my song, she would be classified as a resident alien right now. And she's in the process, hopefully get a green card soon, but she's a resident alien. That alien just means what? That they're not from that country. So these people that he gathered up, they were experts. Why would they maybe come to Israel? Why do we have people come to the U.S.? Work, opportunities. So Israel was a powerhouse at this time. Now, this is shortly before Solomon's going to be king. And under Solomon's reign, Israel is the mightiest country in the whole world. And David's, it was probably already there. It just didn't have the wealth yet, but it was starting to get it. And so this was a place for opportunity, jobs, just like in our own place. So verse 3 says, David also provided great quantities of iron for nails, for the doors of the gates, and for clamps, as well as bronze in quantities beyond weighing, and cedar timbers without number for the Sidonians and Tyrians, brought great quantities of cedar to David. For David said, Solomon, my son, is young and inexperienced, and the house that is to be built for the Lord must be exceedingly magnificent, of fame and glory throughout all lands. I will therefore make preparation for it. So David provided materials in great quantities before his death. Now, these words likely are a little bit prior to the events that we read about in 1 Kings last week. So once again, David had always planned on Solomon to be the king, and God had too. We'll get into that. I think eventually there's a verse where we'll see that to be the case. So Solomon is charged to build the temple. In verse 6, it says, Then he called for Solomon his son and charged him to build a house for the Lord, the God of Israel. David said to Solomon, my son, I had it in my heart to build a house to the name of the Lord my God. But the word of the Lord came to me, saying, You have shed much blood and have waged great wars. You shall not build a house to my name, because you have shed so much blood before me on the earth. Behold, a son shall be born to you, who shall be a man of rest. Now, so remember, we actually went through this prior where God told David that. David wanted to build an altar. Shortly after he brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem, he wanted to build a temple, and God said this here. But God also said something else, and this is significant. It says, "Behold, a son shall be born to you, who shall be a man of rest. I will give him rest from all his surrounding enemies, for his name shall be Solomon, and I will give peace and quiet to Israel in his days." So when was David told this in relationship to Solomon?
Before Solomon was born.
Before Solomon was born. So once again, to further show, David said that Solomon would be king, as we looked at last week, but actually God is the one that said Solomon would be king. So it is interesting. And so I just wanted to point that out. It says in verse 10, "He shall build a house for my name. He shall be my son, and I will be his father, and I will establish his royal throne in Israel forever." Now, it is interesting. Technically, that's true, is it not? So, but David has a little more hierarchy, as I say, and David was the one the promises were made. But Solomon's also given this promise that the throne would go through him. And in fact, when the kingdom's divided, God made a point that there would still be a throne to the house of David. And indeed, that's what takes place. Now, my son, the Lord be with you, so that you may succeed in building the house of the Lord your God, as he has spoken concerning you. Only may the Lord grant you discretion and understanding, that when he gives you charge of Israel, you may keep the law of the Lord your God. Then you will prosper if you are careful to observe the statutes and the rules that the Lord commanded Moses for Israel. Be strong and courageous, fear not, do not be dismayed. I believe we sing a song very similar to that. Usually a closing song for some reason, but we have that song that we sing. So what was the important thing for Solomon to retain? Now, God said he needs to have discretion and understanding. And remember, we'll get into that in a few weeks. Solomon's going to ask God for wisdom to govern the people. He did that well. But what really was God looking for?
Keep the law of
Mm-hmm.
the Lord.
Keep the law of the Lord. Now, isn't it interesting that from a earthly and from a heavenly standpoint, if you took David and you combined him with Solomon, the strengths of both, that would have been the perfect leader. David had a heart to always do what God wanted. Solomon knew how to govern the people. I think Solomon does grow wiser in his heavenly understanding as he gets older, but he went kind of wayward with all the wives that he had. I want us to look at this, though. Be strong. Now, if you look at your Thompson chain, and by the way, I'm going to have stuff on here, so those of you at home don't have one of these, that's fine. We will have information, but be strong. It's number 359. You see that next to where in verse 13 where it says be strong?
Verse 13. Yeah.
Okay. And so we're going to look at these. Now, whether you want to or not, you can. If you want to, go ahead and turn to the 359, and you'll see some verses there. And I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to highlight some. By the way, I don't think it says be strong. It's kind of interesting. It says something else, and then it'll say be strong. But 359 is what you're looking for. And
Verse, do that.
359 is what you're looking for on your Thompson chain.
359.
359. 359, yes. It's right. See, it's right there. Watch this. So look for 359.
At the top of the page, I guess.
Well, it'll be
Fearful conflict.
Okay, so it says spiritual conflict, yes. But then what does it say? I think
Be
it says,
strong.
yeah, be strong. So it's the right one, but it covers other things. So I'll wait till everybody gets there.
Maybe.
Page 1439, if that helps you. Yours is different, huh?
1536 is mine.
Yeah, but you're the only one that has that one.
I'm in the right direction here.
One more page. You got a few of them sticking together.
You need to use it more.
360.
What page is it on?
You
there?
need right the back.
1439.
There's what they're sticking
1439.
Oh,
350.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, very bottom there, 359. Okay, it says conflict spiritual, but then in parentheses it says be strong. And so it covers other things as well, but when we go ahead and turn the page as it continues on the next page. And it goes through all these listed in verses, but then a lot of times on important ones, it will also just have the verse written out. Now, we're not going to read through all of them, but I did want to read some of these. So Deuteronomy 11:8 says, you shall therefore keep the whole commandment that I command you today, that you may be strong and go in and take possession of the land that you are going over to possess. Now, Moses is told this, and then Joshua is told this. In fact, Joshua's told it several times. He's told it by Moses, and then he's told it by God. And so Joshua 1:6, the Lord says to Joshua, be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Then the 1 Kings 2:1-2, this is where Chronicles and Kings meet, because this is what we just read in Chronicles, but the King's account says, when David's time to die drew near, he commanded Solomon's son, saying, I'm about to go the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man. Okay? Now, we have this in the New Testament as well, very similar verbiage. So we have where it says, 1 Corinthians 16:13, be strong, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Ephesians 6:10-11, it says, finally, be strong in the Lord and the strength of his might. And then this is where it says, put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. So what I want us to discuss a little bit in some of our remaining time, and we might get past this, but what does this mean to be strong? And how is it different than maybe what the world would think of being strong?
Fearless, maybe.
Fearless, I think that would be, if you notice, a lot of times it'll even include be strong and courageous. You know, I think that's good. Sometimes I know some of the words in the New Testament that's used for this will, Thayer will define it as cheerful courage. Which, so sometimes we do brave acts because we have to. Well, yeah, I mean, something's happening to your family and you need to rescue them. Sometimes you do it without even thinking. And other times, like a soldier, he knows he's going to have to exhibit courage for not only his own safety, but for the safety of his unit, and for others, and for ultimately the mission of the team that he's on. So, so how does this define? So, well, let's kind of contrast it. So, what does the world think of strength? What does the world think of strength? How would it define strength?
Being number one.
will be number one, or just being physical strength, physical things, oh, that guy's strong, strong as an ox or whatever. And sometimes there's some benefit to being strong like that, but it really doesn't do a lot with your relationship with God. So strength has a lot to do with our courage. It does, and how we do
There's a
things.
scripture in the Bible that says, "Fear not." Let's see how I was trying to think how that went, but
Okay, that's fine. There's a lot that say "fear not," so I wasn't
had
sure.
it once,
Yeah,
and it
I wasn't
disappeared.
100% sure where you're heading, because there are numerous verses that talk about fear
With
not.
you or
Yeah,
something
worth
like
you.
that.
Yeah. There's, in fact, that is repeated numerous times. That we're also told that He will never leave us.
Strength of a country also to be based on the military.
Military strength, yes, and that's not the strength that is being talked about here.
Yeah.
So, what is implied by that? What does it take to remain faithful to God?
Being at peace in your soul. You don't have to be noticed for everything.
Well, that's true, but in regards of what is being told to Solomon,
Mm.
what is implied about being someone that's going to be faithful to God?
Do what he says.
Well, do what He says, but He said to him, be strong, show yourself a man.
Is it King James that says, quit ye like men?
Quit ye like men. Yeah. Quit ye like men. But so what does that imply about being a Christian? Joshua's told, be strong and courageous. We're told in 1 Corinthians 16:13, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. We're told, be strong in the Lord and the strength of His might. So what does that imply about being, in our case, a Christian or someone that's faithful to God? What's required? Otherwise, God wouldn't tell these people this.
All in God's word.
But what's required to do that? He told them that, and then He said, be strong. So what's required?
Commitment to that.
Commitment to that, yes.
Uh,
It's very obvious. I mean, in fact, it's the title. So what's required to be faithful to God? What's the title? What's the thing we're looking at? What's it called? 359. Strength. Be strong. So in order to be a follower of God, you've got to be strong. Okay. Sometimes we don't need to overlook the obvious here. But so that means if you're weak, you're not going to stay faithful, are you?
There's things that come up that makes it kind of difficult.
Yes, it does. But that's why you got to have that courage with it too. So you got to be strong and courageous.
2 or 3 guys out there confronting you and
Mm-hmm.
and threatening to do this and do that, and it's difficult not to
Right.
have that fear just rise up in you right quick.
I think the implication too is the easy thing is not to be strong, not to be courageous. Go with the flow. Do what the majority says. Do what makes you more liked. So it takes strength not to do that. It takes courage.
Brings you back to the story of David
Yeah.
when he defeated Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't going to stand around and listen to Goliath blaspheme the name of God and not do something about it.
Right.
Anybody, all the rest of the army was concerned about, hey, I'm going to get killed if I go against that big brute.
Mm-hmm.
Not David.
Yes. And that's it. But yeah. Yeah. When David finally is in battle with the giant Goliath, he in verse 45 of 1 Samuel 17 says that David said to the Philistine, "You come with me with a sword and a spear, and with a javelin, but I come with you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of armies of Israel, whom you have defiled." And so that's the strength David had. So what I want us to get at, or what I just want us to think about, is so what's heavily implied, if you're going to be faithful to God, you've got to be strong. You've got to be courageous. You've got to act like a man. That's not just Old Testament verbiage, that's the New Testament as well. And so, I even tell, when Paul writes that in 1 Corinthians 16:13, he's telling it to Christians, not just men. So, men have I think a bad rap these days for, what they call it, toxic masculinity, in which I'm not even sure what in the world they're even referring to on that. But, there are people, obviously bad eggs that are men, and there are bad eggs that are women too. But what does it mean when Paul says act like men? What is it about men that's generally, say, distinguished between women a lot of times?
Stand up and lead.
Stand up and lead. That courage, that act of courage that, as far as it goes, if there's an intruder, well, now let's get it more basic. Y'all's kids have left, but you can probably remember when your kids were there. What happens when a spider is found in the house? Who do they call? Or maybe a snake in the yard.
Dad.
Yeah. or
Honey.
yeah.
Dinner.
Yeah. Or mouse even. Well, mouse is worse. You get screamed first usually. But anyway, so those aspects we understand. And so, we need to be strong in the faith. That should be known about you. Now, so let's look at strength. So, in the physical world, so you look at, football players and stuff. So how do they get stronger? Especially linemen. What do they do to get stronger? Work out, usually weights or something, and they build muscles up so they can.
They spend a lot of money and a lot of resources on building up strength.
Yeah. Now you got all these supplements, you got all these protein powders, got all these, all kinds of stuff now. And I do find it interesting that I'm not saying that people today are in better, they probably are in better health overall, but really the amount of weights that people lift, as far as the bottom line, how strong, how much weight you can lift, hasn't really changed that much. It's interesting with all these techniques and other things. I think sometimes the guys today, they like having the show bodies as much as they do. When I was in football in my day, didn't care what our body looked like, it was how strong we were. That was really all that was important. And so, now they like to have that, what they call it, six pack and all that type of stuff. But anyway, get a little sidetracked. But you work out, you work strong. Now, there are ways to do it. You don't have to have weights. I know when I was wrestling, there was something about being matched up with someone that's about your same weight. And boy, that'd wear you out more than anything. Just, locking up someone that was your exact same weight. And, it was technique became important, but also you sometimes got to see who was really strong or not. I mean, it's a different kind of strength. So you work at it though. You gradually work at it. You get to work where you can lift even more, do even more things. So in connection with a Christian, how do we get stronger? What are things we do to get stronger? Study. Okay, so we need to study. Obviously, Romans 10:17 says, so faith comes by hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. So basically, if you want your faith to get stronger, you've got to get into the word. But that's not the only thing. So how else do we get stronger? There are a lot of people, I even know of some atheists that can probably quote probably more scripture than any of us here.
Pray.
Pray, yes, pray would be good. So we would agree that basically just knowing a lot of the Bible isn't going to make you stronger in and of itself, is it?
Practicing it.
Okay, there we go. God then put it into practice. And so we're looking for always. Okay, let's turn to Hebrews chapter 5. And we'll be about verse 11. Hebrews 5, verse 11.
Verse 11.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I'll let everybody's there. Okay. So it says, about this we have much to say, and it is hard to explain since you have become dull of hearing.
I wonder if that applies to me.
Well, I think, yeah, I think it's probably talk about people that can hear, but they don't hear. So this would be kind of like, if your wife always tells you to do something, and at some point you kind of tune it out, and 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 you hear it, but you don't hear it. You know what I mean? And so that's what these people are doing. They it no longer means anything to them, and so they become dull. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the basic principles of the oracles of God. You need milk, not solid food. Now, let's see, come next year or get close there, I will hit a milestone for me. I will have been a full-time preacher longer than I was an engineer. So, that's just a different divide for me. And so, but since I've been preaching 20 years, a little over 20 years now, one consistent theme in most congregations is the people don't even know basic principles anymore. Now, it's not a bad thing to refresh basic principles. I'm not saying that. But they don't even know basic principles. Now, why do you think that's the case?
They don't hear.
They don't hear. And
No,
I don't think
they're
enough of them.
interested in hearing.
When I have ever went to a church to try out or anything, and it's a common question a lot of times asked in relation to this, and I'd say, well, I can tell how spiritually mature a congregation is by how many, especially men, are in a teacher rotation. Because if you've got the same men that always teach, you're not going to be very spiritually mature. And so that is and I understand, some people as they get older, they just physically can't. But that is the big key to how spiritually sound and mature your congregation is how many people are teaching. Now, you can say, well, you teach other ways. Yeah, but we have a need of people to get up front. Now, one of the things that I think has been a disservice to churches is we have almost followed a role that the denominational world has followed. You've got the clergy and the laity. And so there's people that's supposed to teach and do things, and everybody else, they just sit in the pew. And they get to be part of maybe good works, but they don't.
We're accustomed to hiring things done.
Hiring things done, yes. And that's true. Good morning, sir.
Diane Posey had surgery a while ago.
Oh, she did. What?
Her blood sugar was 400 or something, I think she had staph infection. We don't know that for sure yet.
Okay.
But they did surgery a while ago on her. So mom and dad's up there with her.
What kind of surgery did they do?
Okay.
I don't know what kind it is yet, Tim.
Okay. 'Cause
Just said
that's
mom and dad's up there. I don't know
Yeah.
till we get back.
okay. Well, when we close out the study, we'll say a
Yeah.
prayer for her.
Who's this?
My cousin, Diane Poche.
Yeah,
You remember Diane?
she comes here, but she's not here every Sunday, but she's here most Sundays.
Been
She always
sick,
sits
Diane.
Foshi. She always sits next to
Okay.
Betty and I'm Faye. She
Yeah.
sits over there. Yes.
I know who that is.
Okay. Um, so anyway, to me that is a big thing. Is how spiritually mature you are is
Yeah.
based on
Bring home an empty platter.
well, he's got diabetics in his house too, so he don't need to. His dad don't need it either.
They can take them home to mama.
Yeah, if whoever doesn't take it, I'll take the rest. Because okay, so it says back in verse 12 of Hebrews 5, for though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the basic principles of the oracles of God. I think another thing that it demonstrates here is not only, like say how spiritually mature a congregation is how many teachers they got. You don't have any business teaching until you know the basic principles. Okay. So that would be, it says you need milk, not solid food. For everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, since he is a child. But solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice or training to distinguish good from evil. So how do we get strong? Well, we need to study. We need, like I say, prayer helps, but we need to put what we know into action.
You to eat meat.
Eat meat. Well, these people that are working out, and doing all that, it might surprise you, they eat quite a bit. You say, well, how can they eat so much? Well, it's because their body is burning a lot of fuel. Big problem with most of us is our bodies aren't burning a lot of fuel, and yet we still eat like that. but anyway, so you do that. So, so if we want to be as Solomon was instructed, as Joshua had been instructed, as we're instructed in 1 Corinthians 16:13, if we want to be strong, and strong in the faith, what we're talking about, not physical strength. We're talking about things that we've got to do. And it's not easy, is it? It's easier. Why do you think, another trend that's happened in recent times in the, not just the Lord's church, but in the denominational world, is people are drawn to these mega churches or large churches. Why do you think that's the case?
Or entertainment.
More entertainment, sometimes, yes. But even the Lord's church, I know some faithful, some sound large churches, and people are drawn to them. Why do you think people are drawn?
Too many times, people that's left here
Yeah.
is, hey, I can go sit through a service and not have to do anything.
Yes.
Easy to hide.
Easy to hide. Yeah. Is that good for you, though? No, it's not. And it's at some point we need to actually advise people that's not to your benefit. If you think that's easy, that's fine. That makes you a child, makes you an infant, makes you not strong. And we're called to be strong. So, the best thing that could be, and I've always thought that the congregations that are best for the members are probably less than 300 in size, because you will probably have to do something.
That's a big deal. Up in Ozark, Missouri.
Yeah.
I think I told you this before.
Yeah.
And the media came out to the church. That's when they built the Assembly of God church up there.
Right.
They asked the kids, what do you like about coming to church here? So we like the video games.
Yeah.
They're like, they got video games about God and stuff. So, oh, no, they got regular video games.
Yeah.
Entertainment.
Well, it's like I've said, especially if you're in the South, it seems like in some areas even more so, probably more so than Arkansas. I know when I lived in the outside of Atlanta, we actually lived closer to Talladega when we did the Atlanta Motor Speedway. We lived close to both of them, really. I said, if you really wanted a crowd, I know how to get a crowd. we could get some cars, put a bunch of advertisements on them, have them drive around in circles, and we could get a crowd. And then we could have like a little devotional and stuff. They could take a break at some point, stage break, and we get up there and we could do a little devotional, so we could get a crowd.
I think of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
We should,
Yes.
you're
Mm-hmm.
saying we should be teaching.
Yes.
I think that where I'm weak at, if you
Mhm.
want to put it that way,
Right.
is that you have to be confident in yourself that you can do it. And if you don't have that confidence, then you're not, that's just something you need.
Well-
I don't have much of it.
Well, and I think that is probably a common reason why most people won't. But are we called to be weak and timid? We're called to be
Oh,
strong, courageous. And so, I look at my career path. I've been teaching a long time, but I can tell you I'm much, much better now than I was when I started. If I had, in fact, my dad, when he started preaching, and he did pretty good, especially, starting off at, he went to IBC, which is Heritage University now. The first church where he preached at part-time is in between preachers. They chose not to hire him because they said, we want someone more experienced than you. And then things went south after my dad left, and they got down low. And so 2 years later, they hired a guy right out of college that had less experience than my dad. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. My dad, though, got to where he would preach pretty good, pretty well, I think, very quickly. And this one little lady, older, at that church, a guy named Sellers Crane had been the preacher. Sellers Crane, if you have any of those Truth for Today commentaries, he wrote the Matthew commentary to that. He's basically retired now. Good guy. He calls himself the Old Bird now. Sellers Crane, Old Bird. We could probably get him here if we wanted to, but he, well thought of, very good speaker, very eloquent. And so my dad had been preaching maybe 6 months there, and getting better and better, I think, every week. And that little lady, older lady, came up to my dad and said, "Did pretty good today, but you're no Sellers Crane." And people can take that different ways. You can take it, well, what's the bother? Why should I even keep doing it? Leading singing's the same way. Someone get there and lead singing, and do it. And, somebody can say, well, didn't do bad, but you're not as good as Rick Scott. Is that the standard that you go by? No, we do the best we can.
Beat John Denver. We can't beat John Denver.
Well, you can't. But my point is, that's not the standard we go by. We go by a standard of doing the best we can, and we have an obligation to be active, to do things, especially the men. I mean, we are the ones that have to lead the church, and so we need more people willing to do things.
So how do you motivate them to do more things? You get
Well,
people just sit there like a log, look at you.
I think
Right.
to a degree you do have to kind of call people out, let them know, like Paul did in Hebrew, Hebrew writer did in Hebrews, where it said they were babes. They ought to be teachers by now. And so there are times that you've got to confront people and let them know. If you want to be strong, like the Lord has required you to be strong, you've got to do more. And now, we each have talents. So I'm not saying someone that has a really bad stuttering issue should get up there and try to speak. I can write really well, but obviously that could be probably a distraction for them. But there are other things they could do. And somebody that's tone deaf.
That's what the way I feel.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say this.
There's things that I don't feel like that I am qualified to do or
Right.
capable of doing, but I know there's other things that I can do,
Yes.
and I try to do that.
And I would say, someone in your shoes now, the best thing you can do is do what you can, but then encourage others to do more so they don't wind up with limited abilities in the future. And I think so much we've allowed that to, but now it's not just us that has this issue. I've been at churches, 700 people, they had the same issue. They'd have the same issue. It's just that with 700 people, you've got, it looks like you got a lot more, but really, if you went by percent, they've actually got less a lot of times than some of these smaller churches that actually are willing to participate. And so, for those of you that if you have any, I guess regrets might be the way. I wish I'd done more teaching, or I wish I'd got into teaching more. I wish I'd tried singing. You can be an encourager for younger to say, this isn't what God really wanted for people. But there is a time when people that get older, they should, we talked about this, the priest. When did the priests basically have a forced retirement under the law of Moses?
I still feel like
there's no retirement in the church.
Well, there's no retirement, but obviously, I'll use someone, and I hope he doesn't mind. Richard Boersma basically taught, did everything. He was an elder for 40 something years, almost 50, I guess. Might have been 50, close to it. But Richard, I still think he does a good job when he gets up there, but he knows he's not what he once was. He can't remember things. Things are much more difficult for him. And so he's kind of backed away. Some people, that gets to the old thing. Some people are old at different ages. I know some people that preached to this 98, still was the great deal. Their mind was just amazing that they still had the ability. But the point is, young people should be up and coming and filling these roles. And so, I was talking about the priest. The priest, they at 50, they no longer were in active duty anymore. And of course, that was a very physical job. As you get into the context of it, they had to slaughter, oxes, calves. They had to slaughter sheep, and it's very physically demanding. So when they got 50, it was up for the younger people to come up and replace them. And maybe sometimes we've not pushed these younger people into doing more. And it gets to, I think, kind of what we like. So say someone's really dynamic and good, and I like him better. I don't really want to listen to someone that's just learning, or I don't want to hear someone singing that don't know how to do it yet. But the way they get there is by being put into practice.
We had Don Woods here.
Yep.
Taught our class.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were in it. They taught us how to sing, taught us how to do everything, and the church is all about, and the service, everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned a lot from listening to that. Why we got away from that, I have no idea.
I don't know. I really don't. I don't know why churches got away from that.
Still wide open.
I know. Larry asked me one time if I would count, the people.
Yeah.
Okay, I felt like that was one duty that I could take care of. I think there is another one that I'm still capable of doing if asked to do so, and that's serve on the Lord's table.
Well, now you made a mistake there.
Part of most of the time, my legs are still capable of doing a good job.
Just opened your mouth because the guy that does that is right here, and so I have a feeling next Sunday, if you're up to it, you may be.
Well, you may not have noticed it, but my
eye contact. Okay, yes, and that's how it gets done.
I'm willing to do that,
and I tell the story, and it takes strength. I think the older we get, it takes even more strength to do things that we've not been doing. Dale does a great job with, doing the songs now, and it has. I never minded doing it, but yet it is a lot easier on me when I don't have to.
Frees you up to do
It frees me up, especially if I'm back there in the booth and for whatever reason, Larry can be up there, but half the time they'll come up to me and ask me a question or tell me something. And of course, if it's during the songs, it's like you can't do 2 or 3 things at once. And so I do appreciate it. But I'll tell a story about a guy named Melvin Cargill. And
I could probably do both,
yes,
handle both of those things.
yeah,
But
like I say,
prayer is hard for me.
well, and that's why I was going to
making
get.
comments and that.
Yeah,
sort of
that's
thing.
where I was going to get to, though. So Melvin Cargill, he was 65. He'd been appointed as a deacon. He was mainly over the church grounds and building, and he was a landscaper before he retired, and he did really well on that. But he realized he needed to do more, and so he kind of like you was reflecting, okay, what can I do more? And there, the people that waited on the table, they said prayers. So he knew if he wanted to do more, he was beyond in his mind the ability to teach, but yet he decided that he needed to be able to say a public prayer.
I accept the fact, I'm speaking personally for myself,
Right.
but I accept the fact that we do have some younger men that is stronger and is
Well, let me,
needs to come
Right.
along in serving on the Lord's
but
table.
but yet there's still no reason people can't grow even if they're, let's say, over 60. Well, I should say over 55 because I'd fit in the, I don't fit in the over 60 yet. But let me finish my story, then we'll take. But so Melvin Cargill decided he wanted to say public prayers. He felt bad because he'd wasted his whole life as a Christian, never said a prayer in public. And so he told the guy, kind of like our Larry, but he told the guy he was actually deacon over he would put the services together and list the men and do that. And he told him, said, put me down for prayer. And actually 2 of them, Bobby Williams was the deacon's name. 2 of them are really largely responsible for this. He told them, put me down. However, I'm going to do my best. But I can't guarantee you that I won't turn you down when it's time. But don't give up on me. So, sure enough, about a month later, Bobby Williams had Melvin Cargill down to say a prayer. Melvin went up to Bobby and said, I can't do it today. Don't give up on me. So that went that way probably 3, 4, 5 times. Finally, one day, Bob Williams had Melvin sit down for a closing prayer. Melvin didn't tell him, I can't do it. He got up there and to me said the most beautiful. It was different prayer than what most people, because most people say rote prayers. They got certain catchphrases that are used over and over. His prayer was from the heart, and he did it. It was fairly short. You could tell he was nervous. But then he did it again, and again. So my point is not that you have to be able to say a prayer. My point is, regardless of your age, you can learn to do more. It may take some time. It definitely takes not just the strength, but what's the other aspect? Courage. And so I would encourage all of us to find things that we can do more. And you are correct. We need the younger ones to rise up, but that doesn't limit what you have as a responsibility to yourself.
I was amazed to see my dad on the Lord's table yesterday morning. He's done it before, but he's coming out of the shell just a little bit.
Yes,
that man can sing. He can lead sing if he wants to lead sing.
Yes,
good.
Yeah. Well, he used to do they'd go singing,
Oh yeah.
and I realize that's not church type songs, but yet he has the voice to be able to do it. Yes. What was you going to say?
What I was thinking was, most of these things that we're saying here need to be said to the teachers in our class.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
Well,
They are the ones who are in a position to develop leadership.
yes. And I will say this, and something that we need to probably do this year. You know, COVID got everyone just way out of sorts and the things that we always used to do. We need to have some type of teachers appreciation dinner where we go over certain things. And so we need to have something where we get the teachers together and do that, provide some training for teachers, provide whatever. So we need to get back to those things because it is at those classes and other things that we, see the development of the young. So anyway, we're actually over time. Hopefully it was beneficial. I'm going to close out. Doesn't mean we have to leave, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream at this point. And then we can keep talking for a while, but I'm going to close the stream out. We'll have a prayer in a minute and other things, but saying good.
Y'all pray for that 16-year-old family. 16-year-old got killed in a car wreck here in Louisville. Was that both?
I wasn't aware of that.
Stark last name.
Okay. Let me go